Well, I'm a Vikings fan.
Mm-mm.
Oh,
I'm
I'm in
sorry.
the picture. Oh.
Three of them.
I mean, the
All the
good
same size.
You stole the sheriff's chair.
Huh?
You stole the sheriff's chair.
Nice sheriff.
Well, who put them there anyhow?
Well, I don't know, you can rotate desks, so.
Put them there, they're in that desk drawer and they're all the same, so I'm taking them.
Huh?
No.
Okay, see ya.
So, Commissioner Falk, you
You're always
said
sympathetic.
the home rule, is that the 24th?
Yeah.
At what time?
2 o'clock.
Two.
The Zoom meeting is on and I record it.
Ready to go?
And you know, we do, Bill, you know, yeah.
We're at, yes. Just hold on a second.
I know.
After Amber, I guess.
That would be great, Mr. Chair.
You have places to go and things to do?
I have, yes, one of my staff, I believe, because of the weather, so I'd like to get back as soon as possible downstairs.
All right. Grand Forks County Commission will come to order. All commissioners are present, counting Commissioner Peach and Commissioner Ian on Zoom. The first matter before the commission is the approval of the minutes.
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Ross. Do we have a second?
Second, this is Cynthia.
Thank you. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes. Next is the approval of the order of the agenda. And we need to add Mr. Gershevsky to the agenda. And the suggestion has been made to put him right after tax equalization. Can we have a motion on
I'll
that?
make a motion to make the addition.
Okay, second, anyone?
Second. Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 You'll be right after Amber. And the approval of the consent agenda, does anyone have any items they'd like pulled today first?
Commissioner Falk, I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Thank you very much. Do we have a second?
I'll second that motion.
Mr. Peach seconds. Thank you. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes. And we're already down to public health.
You made any time to daydream?
Well, and before you start, I did get your email and I got to make a note so I don't forget. I'll get to that. So thank you. Go ahead.
Chair Falk and members of the commission, I'm Michael Dulis with Grand Forks Public Health here to give a COVID-19 update. Next slide. So since last week and since I last spoke with you, there's been a significant change in the COVID situation in Grand Forks County. We have had a multiple fold increase in the number of cases that we've identified per week, a multiple fold increase in the number of tests we've been running per week, a significant increase in the percent positivity, relative, steady amount of vaccination, steady to lower. But really the topic du jour is the number of COVID cases we've been seeing in Grand Forks County, and that has been steadily, even more of exponentially increasing. Next slide.
Can I just ask one question? Are we at the highest level we've ever been or not?
We are at the highest case level that we've ever been as of either today or yesterday.
But not at the highest level of positivity.
And for positivity too.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Case wise, we are at the highest levels that we've ever been in the entire pandemic. This slide illustrates that really well. So this is comparing where we're at right now compared to 2020, 2021. So this starts on 3/9, which is when the first case was identified, or 3/15, I think it is, when the first case was identified in North Dakota. And then you can see the big blue peak was the fall of 2020. The black line is where we're at right now. And so our case numbers are higher than they ever have been, expressed as a rate per 100,000. Next slide. With that increase in the number of cases, we're in a different situation than we were in the fall of 2020. There's a significant increase in the availability of at-home testing. So you would think that there's probably more positives out there than what are getting reported. But with that, we are fairly surprised to see the increase in testing that we're seeing overall. So as you can see on this slide, our testing numbers have been pointing up, both in the antigen testing as well as the PCR testing. Our testing site has unfortunately had to start turning people away at certain times, if they need like a specific test, like a PCR test, or they're coming kind of late in the day, which is something that we really haven't been running into nearly, any time in the recent past, at least. So we're having significant numbers of tests that we've been putting out. Next slide. But to go along with that, we're seeing significant numbers of positive tests. So our positivity rate is well above 15% right now. And on certain days and certain test types, the positivity rate can even float as high as 50% for like a PCR test on a certain day. Single day positivity rates for all tests combined have been frequently in the 30% range. Next slide. So when we compare this outbreak compared to previous outbreaks, so the line on the bottom is fall of 2021. And so, this is kind of recent memory. You heard me coming back or coming and visiting with you frequently and letting you know that the cases are kind of following a sawtooth pattern where they were just kind of staying right between about 30 and 60 cases per 100,000 all fall. And so what that looked like on the graph was it was very linear. It was just, a line pointed up. When we looked at cumulative cases, it was actually, despite having the impacts that we saw, increase in deaths, increase in hospitalizations, compared to what we saw the fall previous, it was, a lot more sustainable and predictable. Last fall, we saw a pretty significant increase, and then we saw it kind of drop off over a number of days. What we're seeing right now is the cumulative case number is pointing even higher, so cases are accumulating even faster than they did in the fall of 2020. So in many ways, this is a really new kind of territory that we're in, where we're having such high case counts, compared to any of the previous outbreaks. Next slide. So where are those cases happening? By number, the most cases right now are in the 20 to 29 age group. Despite them being the most common age group to have cases, we actually haven't been seeing a real disproportionate number of cases in the college age group, in the college. In college individuals, so we can drill down a little bit more when we look in our system. So we haven't been seeing a big increase in that age group. It seems to be more community-wide in that 20 to 29 age group. The next most frequent is the 30 to 39, and they actually have a higher case rate because there's fewer people in that age group. And then basically anybody under the age of 60 have been seeing high case numbers. Fortunately, in absolute numbers, higher ages, 70 plus, the numbers have been relatively low, which does bode well for us in keeping hospitalizations down. Next slide. Grand Forks is definitely not alone, though, in seeing the increase in COVID cases. When I was looking at where the cases are happening right now, they do seem to be primarily focused on the larger communities in the state. So our kind of 4 peer communities, or 3 peer communities, as well as ourselves, as well as also seeing increases in the Williston, Dickinson, Jamestown, and Devils Lake areas. When we look into the smaller areas like Walsh County, Trail County, Nelson County, they haven't seen as big of a bump overall in the cases, which does, kind of coincide with, Omicron being something that is just spread very easily in, in tight settings and things like that, whereas they probably aren't as packed together in those smaller counties. Next slide. One of the fortunate things that we're seeing thus far is our case or our hospitalization rates have stayed relatively similar to what they were this fall. And so, for instance, Altru right now has 19 COVID positive inpatients. Not everybody, they have 19 COVID positive inpatients. The number of people they have with COVID related illness will be slightly higher because people will end up being not infectious, but still in the hospital for various reasons. But that is a really good metric, barometer on where we're at with hospitalization. So right now we're running about 20 per 100,000. Absolute number is about 19 when we factor in the whole Altru service area that they have in their house. Next slide. So looking at the bottom line, our hospitalizations are staying very similar to what we saw with Delta. Despite this increase in cases, the increase in cases, it amounts to about 216% in the percent increase in cases over the past 3 weeks, 76% in the past 2 weeks. Our percent positivity is at the highest point that it's been in the pandemic. So the real kind of threats that we look at in the coming weeks are going to be, can we get enough tests to meet the demand in the community? This has been something that's been happening throughout the country. We want to, get people tested when they want a test. And we've been very fortunate to have the strong testing program at the Fritz Pollard Center. It's very rare that we run into any major bottlenecks there or anything like that. And we, as a state, have been good about getting tests to us. So it's just kind of a looming concern that, is there. And then the hospitalization rates are going to also be the kind of major concern looking forward. Are we going to see a big increase in hospitalization rates, even if Omicron is, causes fewer hospitalizations? What we're seeing now is an exponential change between Omicron and Delta, and so we don't know how that's going to impact people eventually ending up in the hospital versus not. So our hope is that hospitalizations stay relatively low. When we look at other states, it's been kind of variable. Some places have had high hospitalization rates. Some places have been relatively quiet. So the next few weeks are going to be very telling for us. With that, I am open to any questions.
So this high rate of increases, is that from Christmas and New Year's, everybody getting together? Because a year ago, people weren't getting together. So
Commissioner Ross, I think it kind of created a perfect storm. So Omicron hitting the U.S. right before the holidays, we were kind of in a little bit of a lull COVID testing or COVID case wise, and so for a lot of people it felt like a right time to resume holiday gatherings, and Omicron kind of stealthily came and joined our holiday gatherings as well. So it's really built right off of the holidays, so you probably can tie it together. Yeah. It's been kind of the concern that I've had all along that these gatherings were going to cause these big increases, and this has happened, whereas last year that didn't at Christmas. So.
Sure. Thank you.
So my question, going back to, I don't know, it was page 55 or whatever, but where it said that the weakness was 316 are COVID cases have increased in the past 3 weeks by 316%.
Yeah. So when you do like a percent change calculation, in I guess the first slide of data that I had, it showed we had about, I think, 1,400 cases last week. 2 weeks ago, or 3 weeks ago, we were at about 340. So when I punched it in, I ended up with 316% for the increase. So
that's huge, and that isn't even the flu.
Yeah, and we have seen, locally, as I mentioned to you last meeting, was that, flu has made a comeback in the community. Though, prevalence isn't nearly as high as COVID is, but, it's been a surprise, I think, for healthcare providers to all of a sudden have flu to worry about on top of this all. And COVID tests are coming back negative and they do a flu test and, that's something we have to worry about too,
Yeah,
so.
and then I think Kari had put out something to us and that had, did I know, 5 deaths because of flu? Is that, do you know if that's in Grand Forks County or if that's statewide?
It sounds like it would be statewide. I hadn't heard
Statewide,
Yeah.
okay.
of anything
So
specific.
deaths from flu, are we having more of those than we are from COVID?
Less.
Less, okay. So how do we get that information out to the public about this 316% increase? I know you guys are doing a wonderful job and I'm not pointing fingers at you because I know you're making every effort and so it's got nothing, but how do we get that out other than hopefully we have media on and could bring this to the attention? Because I don't think that there's people that know that.
And there has been coverage in the media on this. It's a matter of whether or not people have been,
Look at it.
consuming that media or, things like that. So, we are trying to get that out. It's, very much a national narrative right now, which kind of helps us in that we aren't running into an outbreak when everyone else is quiet. So if people know that Omicron is a big deal right now, I think, but knowing the local perspective, that's why we come and do these meetings, is it helps get the word out, helps kind of percolate to the community as well. So.
Well, it's just that when you're out and about, you don't see a lot of masks.
But schools don't wear them now.
Huh?
The schools aren't, it's not mandatory in the schools anymore either.
It's like, what do people think?
Then there's a debate, kind of being waged, publicly and nationally on how Omicron is going to act. Is everybody going to, end up getting sick with Omicron, or, is it kind of a foregone conclusion that we're all going to get sick? And that debate's going to keep happening, but there is also the realization that we don't have to all get sick at once if that is the case. So,
Well, we might not get sick, but if we're a carrier now, because we've been exposed, maybe grandma's gonna get sick,
Yeah.
or my parent, or my neighbor's child, or whatever, I mean, it's just the thinking, the rationale people aren't thinking.
yeah, there's a lot of nuance to it, and that's why I'm saying we don't have to all get sick right now. Even if there's even if there's talk of this being a foregone conclusion, that doesn't mean that doesn't mean that things need to, or we need to, give up mitigation efforts or anything like that.
And then another thing that always amazes me is that, people, they brush it off because they don't have underlying conditions or they're not elderly or whatever. But a lot of people don't know that you have underlying conditions, they haven't surfaced yet and you don't even know it. And so they think they're safe. I don't get it. But whatever, I'm done.
I saw, I think it was in the Grand Forks Herald, I'll give them credit. They had a picture of the Sanford bulletin board that showed like 201 hospitalized in North Dakota and 88% were on vaccinated, which I thought was an interesting figure and one we've kind of been hearing that's pretty consistent. So the question I've got is are we still vaccinating a reasonable amount of people every day or every week here in the community?
So Chair Falk, we are still giving out a fair number of vaccinations in the community. We can always be giving out more. We'd always be happy to have our doors busted down at the vaccination center instead of the testing center. But we are still, last week, Grand Forks Public Health, I think, gave about 800 vaccinations, if I'm remembering correctly from the data. So we are still seeing people coming to our site, a lot of boosters right now, but we're also still seeing people come in for the first and second doses. So the vaccine work is still very important to us. It's still very important in the community. We're still hoping people do get vaccinated because there is, even even if, someone perceives that they're gonna end up getting, Omicron or something like that, there's still a lot of benefit against serious illness and death, by being vaccinated. And, the numbers clearly show that, especially when you have an enterprise like Sanford that can show all the hospitalizations for their entire system and, how many are vaccinated versus not.
Well, and I agree, and I think Commissioner Knopf just talked about it briefly, but we have to limit down the number of people being hospitalized. Even though people aren't dying at quite as high a rate, which is great, if we run the hospital numbers up too high, then they're not going to be able to get the same level of care that they're getting right now. So it's critical that people stay out of the hospital. So.
And that's, the things that kind of keep a person up at night when you're working in public health during a pandemic. It's really, one of those major things is, your colleagues working in the healthcare system and how they're faring. And, we hear, plenty of anecdotes from people that we used to work with, or, people we, some people still, work casually in the healthcare system and stuff like that. And you just hear of people, a lot of people leaving healthcare right now just because of the amount of stress that there is, particularly in providing hospital-based care. So there's been a heavy burden placed on healthcare systems throughout this pandemic. And, we are keeping, we're keeping pushing them a lot. And that is a significant concern for us. And, I want to add though that I'm speaking as healthcare in general, I'm not speaking for all jury.
Okay. Anyone else have anything? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Emergency management's next, I think.
Good evening, Commissioner Falk and members of the board. You're off the hook tonight. I don't have anything.
Well, you make Amber very happy, so.
I know, I was going to text her and say, you're going to be up next, but
She's starting to lean forward to come up to the podium. So thank you. Come on up, Amber.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, today I just have some information about the ag land values for 2022. You can see the attached letter that I provided my township assessors. And you can see the county averages provided by North Dakota State Tax Commissioner's Office. You have any questions on that? Okay, the estimated average per acre for the county as a whole on cropland and non-cropland combined for 2022 is $986.70 as compared with $1,020.84 for 2021. Therefore, I am recommending 0% change in agricultural land values for 2022, which keeps us within the state recommended tolerance of 96%. It won't go through all the other numbers. You can see those. You don't have to make a motion on anything. This is just for your information, but do you have any questions?
No.
Okay, that was all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Let's see, I think buildings and grounds next.
Commissioners, thank you for this opportunity. I wanted to take this opportunity just to give you an update on the construction and cleanup effort going on in the building for the water fountain that failed on 3rd floor. Currently, the demo work that needed to be done to keep mold mitigated from the building and any further damage from the wet walls, that work is done. The insurance adjuster was here today with the contractor and approved reconstructing or repairing the walls again, putting them back together. And the insurance adjuster commended our contractor that's working with us on the work that he's performed on doing his due diligence on making sure we're drying properly, but yet keeping the repair work from getting too far out of hand as far as from a cost or construction aspect on it. Currently, what has been opened up has been dried properly back down with moisture meters below 8%. So they're very satisfied with that drying feature. An advantage of that is heating season helped a lot in that as well, because the building is dry just out of the natural aspect of heating season. An outlook or a forecast on completion is probably about 3 weeks from this point because of taping and painting and whatnot. Once the drywall work is done, the taping and painting is securing a taper and painter has been a little bit of a challenge for our general on that. Currently at this point, no carpet was approved for replacement as the moisture meters were satisfied, if you will, too quickly. We isolated the leak that Monday morning. We found it. We extracted all the carpet. We dried it, and after extracting it, and it dried up well. There is some puckering on second floor, particularly that the adjuster discussed with me. He said it will settle down over time. It hasn't as of yet, but he'll leave that open for discussion later if we're not satisfied with all the puckering in the carpet settles out. The unfortunate thing that we will end up with on second and third floor, so this is kind of also a request as well as an information update, is whether the commission would like to entertain removing the curling wallpaper that's been curling for a number of years on second and third floor, because those walls were dry. They weren't damaged in that, but now we're going to have freshly painted, freshly drywall repaired walls, and we're still going to have 20-year wallpaper in certain areas of the of second and third floor commons areas because they are not part of the repair aspect of it. I do not have prices to throw out for you for that as speculative numbers. I can get those, and the time to do it would be while this work is going on, though, with the tapers and painters in the building particularly. And whether or not I should entertain that with the contractor is kind of a request to you at this point on that.
Well, I'll just jump in. I think we should do it. Get them in and start the project. The wallpaper is not going to kill us financially. And I agree with you, the time to do it is right now. Let's move on. Anyone else have a comment?
I can bring my hairspray, or not my hairspray, but my blow dryer and remove the wallpaper if you'd like.
We'll let you tackle all you
We'll save
want. Yeah, it's 3 sections of walls in between second and third floor that have 22-year-old wallpaper on it that would need to be repaired. I haven't measured them out. I haven't discussed that with the general on that, but I will get information on that.
Well, I'm not proposing to get information. I'm proposing let's get it done.
Okay.
Commissioners Ingen and Peach, do you have any thoughts on it? I think our general consensus here is let's get that taken care of while we're doing it.
Yeah.
I would agree.
Okay, you have your marching orders on the wallpaper.
Okay. Yep, that's not a complete repaint or a complete remodel to those commons areas, but that gets rid of that 22, 23-year-old wallpaper that's still in those areas, and then finishes up this work. That is all that I had for update. Any other questions on what happened or why it happened?
My question is that water fountain break. Was there a reason for it? I mean, what happened? Is it because it's really old and do we have to look at replacing maybe some of the others?
Where it failed at was in a solder joint where the compressor and the cold water storage is inside the water fountain itself. One of the copper lines where they're soldered together. Speculatively, I could only give you a speculative reason for failure is every time a water fountain starts and stops, the refrigeration unit there's a slight vibration and shake there, and that solder joint cracked and broke. And that happened roughly by what we could see on security camera footage. On Sunday, I forget the date now on the calendar, roughly about 1 o'clock in the afternoon when the cameras started detecting water expanding out on 3rd floor from that waterfall failure. And then from that point forward, at roughly 5 o'clock in the afternoon on Sunday, that's when there was water present on 2nd floor where it had leaked through passages in the floor where things are penetrations through the floor, from floor to floor, what have you. And then of course from 3rd floor, it spilled all the way over to the curtain walls and down the walls. And the big shocker was when the doors were frozen shut at 20 below that Monday morning because we couldn't get in the building through the entryways because the cold aluminum doors and water don't mix at 20 below. So
There's nothing that's more damaging than water.
yeah, so the long and short of why it failed, age partially. It was 22 years old, like the building is, but do water fountains fail at 22 years old? Not necessarily. Could it have been an integrity issue with that particular solder joint? Don't know, can't honestly say. But we'll have a new one in place there. That is one other thing I can add to it, is that water fountain is on order and will be replaced as part of the insurance claim project.
So is that something that's visual? I mean, you open it up and you can see maybe that you have an issue in there. All I'm saying, I know things are gonna fail when, some might last 30 years, some might last 5 years type thing, but is there any way or somewhere where you could visibly see if that potentially would be a problem in one of the others so that we could avoid?
We could check all of them at that same point to see if it looks like anything. It's not something that would be a preventative maintenance check or a regular. And there again, to answer you in all honesty, I don't know if every water fountain is assembled with the same solder joint there, because it would appear that as they assemble them together and assemble them, whether that weld joint is here or here, 6, 8, 10 inches away from something, I don't know
I
if
just
everyone's
thought if we
identical.
could visually look at it, and I didn't even know if that was a
We'd have to
possibility.
remove the panels on the water fountains, and that could be done. I mean, it could be done as a proactive measure to see if we're looking at anything similar on the other ones, if that's a direction. you want us to
I'm
go.
not suggesting that, I'm just curious.
Anything else?
Oh, I guess that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have human resources.
So Chair Falk and the rest of the commission, I'm here to make an introduction of our new Human Service Zone Director, Antoine Pickett, and invite him to come up and tell you a little bit about himself.
Good afternoon. My name is Antoine Pickett. I am originally from North Carolina. I have a bachelor's degree in social work, and I attended graduate school at Liberty University with concentration in master's in public administration. I have been in social work since 2005 and pretty much have done every aspect of child welfare, from investigations, assessments, treatment, foster care, chafing, which is working with at-risk adolescents. I was a probation and parole officer in North Carolina for 2 years, dealing with gang offenders. And I left from there and went to Denver, Colorado for about 4 years as a program manager in child welfare. And after leaving there, I went to Dallas, Texas, being a program manager for disabled intellectual disabilities. So I have pretty much a great understanding of all social services aspects of the job. Economic assistance is not my strong point with the Medicaid and food stamps and SNAP, but that is something that I can quickly learn. I'm excited to take this role in this position. And that's pretty much me in a nutshell.
That's a lot.
I'm
Wow.
Well, we're glad you're with us.
Yes, so yeah.
excited to be here.
Anybody have any questions?
No, just welcome and look forward to working with you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Anything else, Michelle?
I have one other. All right. So on the agenda, we had topic of the administrative pay requirements. And then a few things kind of went a little crazy last week with COVID. So I'm going to do a little bit different update. It'll kind of piggyback off of what Mr. Dulitz told you earlier. So I wanted to give you a brief update on the current status of COVID exposure as it relates to Grand Forks County employees. So the number of times that we've had employees out due to isolation pertaining to COVID from December 1st of 2021 through today is approximately 40% of the number of situations that we've had from January 1st of 2021 through today. So 40% of our exposure and people having to be off of work has come in the last 6 weeks. It's a little bit disconcerting, but the good news is that just because people are off work or out of the building doesn't mean that they're not working. So we've been able to utilize remote work in many of the situations, which has lessened the reliance on paid administrative leave for those who qualify. The severity of symptoms that we've, and when I say we, I mean Roberta and myself, working with our point of contact with public health, the severity of symptoms have been less, which also has enabled people to work remotely because they're not out sick. Additionally, with the newest guidance that we've gotten from public health, we've been able to return people to work in a shorter period of time if they're either asymptomatic or if their symptoms are resolving. The challenge that we have is that the Omicron variant is more highly contagious, which has led to the increases that we've seen from both positive tests and employees being exposed to positive close contacts or household members. I just wanted to give an update that as we receive new guidance from public health on how to handle COVID, Roberta and I have been adjusting our protocols to keep people and their families as safe as we can. And also, we always want to enable county clients to receive the services that they require and to keep our county buildings open to the public. So that's my COVID update. Does anyone have any questions? Okay, so thank you very much.
Okay, Director of Administration, he had to log off, so we can scratch him for today. State's Attorney, let's see, Ms. Wamstead, do you have anything for us? Oh, the mental health service contract.
Yes, thank you, Chair Falk, members of the commission. In the packet was a copy of a contract for defense services for the mental health services. If you recall at the last meeting, I updated you that Darla Schumann's law firm has had this contract for a number of years and provided very good services for the county. Unfortunately, she's unable to continue with the contract. She previously had as a backup for her the Swanson and Warcup law firm, and they have kindly agreed to take over this contract since she is no longer able to. So essentially the contract that's before you is almost identical to the contract that we entered into previously with Ms. Darla Schumann, including the rate of pay. The most significant distinction between our prior contracts and this one is typically we contract on a yearly basis. This one is for a period of 6 months, so it's January 1st through June 31st of this year. The reason for that is since the pandemic hit, the caseload for mental health civil commitments that have been processed has considerably increased. Also, the rate of pay has not been adjusted for a number of years. The Swanson and Workup law firm has agreed to begin the contract for the first 6 months at the current rate of pay. This allows their firm to kind of make an assessment of the time commitment that's involved for them. But it also will allow us to work into our budget for next year if there is any type of adjustment in the rate of pay moving forward. If we do need to adjust the pay at the 6-month mark, I do have some ideas for where we could pull the funds from other sources in the county budget, so we wouldn't necessarily need to ask for a budget increase if that were the case. But we can certainly address that in 6 months once we get there and have a better idea of what their request might be and if there's any stabilization with the increase in the number of cases that are coming into our office. So I'm available to answer any questions regarding this contract, or if there are no questions, I would ask for a motion for the chair's signature on this contract.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
I move approval of the contract and for the chair to sign.
thank you.
Mr. Chair, I would second that motion.
Thank you. We have a motion to approve the contract and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's approved for my signature.
Thank
Let's,
you. I have nothing further.
thank you very much. Committee reports, let's start out in the hinterland with Commissioner Ingen. Do you have anything for us?
Well, there was a standard EDC meeting a couple weeks back. And then you and I both attended by Zoom on the Government Advisory Committee. For the rest of the board, if you remember, these things come up when someone applies for a tax increment or tax increment financing or pilot, which is payment in lieu of taxes. And if it's over a 5-year term, the city has to come to us and to the school board. And is it the park board as well, Commissioner Falk? I can't recall.
Yeah, they're involved also.
Yeah, I thought all these taxing entities. So they will be presenting those to the commission. I guess I don't know the exact timing, but coming up in the next couple of meetings. There are 2 projects. That's all I have.
Yeah, I'll just follow up as long as we're talking about that. The advisory group approved both the projects, one's being the Fufang and the other is the small hotel to be built downtown here.
Yeah.
So, but more to come on those. Commissioner Peach?
The Red River Regional Council meeting, the board meeting is tomorrow morning at 10 via Zoom. And the Airport Authority board meeting is on Thursday at 8. I will be attending both of those. Last week was on Thursday was the Grand Forks Health Board meeting. I did not attend that meeting due to weather. Other than that, that's all I have.
Okay, Commissioner Knopf.
Just looking at my calendar here. I don't believe that I have anything to report. I've got library board meeting tomorrow at 4. And I think that's the only thing that I have coming up. There was a public safety and infrastructure committee meeting earlier today at 3 o'clock. And the discussion where the topic of discussion was the courthouse front entrance security proposal that they have submitted to enhance the entry. And so it was the decision of the board, which included Ms. Peach, Mr. Roston,
Mr. Ingen.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Engen, Mr. Roston, myself. And so what the recommendation was, or agreed to was, is that we report that to this group with the recommendation that we move forward with the 25%, or that we move forward, they move forward applying for a grant. And, but with that comes a 25% match from county commission guarantee, I guess, on that. And so that was on capital improvements, right? And so the recommendation is that we move forward with that. And so I don't know if we need to take action on
Yeah,
that.
I think we should have a motion. So, and the court needs to rely on that a little bit also, but a motion for the county to proceed to apply for a court services grant or whatever they call it. And that we would support 25% of the project on the security desk at the courthouse. And I think I have to sign that, do I not? My signature. Mr. Ford will have to get to work on it, and we'll have to talk to himself right now. So maybe you could make that a motion.
I will make that motion.
Okay.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to proceed with applying for a grant to work on the security desk at the courthouse. Any further discussions? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Okay,
And that's all I have.
Mr. Ross.
I had my first fair board meeting last week. And they approved all the shows and events coming to the fair for 2022. And it was a good meeting. So MPO was supposed to be tomorrow at 12 noon. They moved it off a week because there's some people that could not make it. And so it's about all.
And the only additional thing I've got is we had a home rule meeting. Commissioner Ross was there. We started the process. We're going to have another one next Monday. It all went pretty well. It's preliminary at this point, and we'll keep you apprised of what's going on. And that's all I've got on that. I got one other thing to bring up. I'm thinking, you know, we all attend all of these committee meetings. And I'm thinking of appointing everyone to both of those committees and making them a committee of the whole. I think Commissioner Ross is chairman of the administrative services, and now who did we put in public safety? Was that Commissioner Ingen?
Yep.
Commissioner Ingen they'd remain the chair of those committees, but all 5 commissioners would be on each one. We all attend anyway, and then it wouldn't, I think it'd be better and not so repetitive. The city does that. Anybody have any comments on it?
Good plan.
I would be in support of that.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, so
Yes.
when I notice the meetings, are they a committee meeting or they're not?
It's
And do you take final action at that committee meeting?
No, the committee will still refer it to the,
Right.
just like we have been on the
Okay.
commission. That way the public could attend the
Oh,
commission
sure.
meeting too.
Okay.
But yeah, and we're almost all attending anyway. So, so if you would make that change and add everybody to each of the committees with Commissioner Ingen in charge of one and Commissioner Ross in charge of the admin services.
Sure.
That'd be great. Thank you. And if it doesn't work, we'll go back to the way we were. Unfinished new business, anything from, nothing here? Correspondence, anything? No, we don't have any. All we've got is adjournment. Can we get
So
that done?
moved.
Second.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you. Take care, everyone, and stay warm.
I'm glad you
Stay
guys didn't
safe.
come in. The roads are pretty bad out there, so.
Yeah. Thank you.
Back forward.
Yeah.
Highway 2 is closed.
I had a
Oh,
friend
really?
was